Welcome to my series based on Zentangle's Bijou Be Well, done in May 2025. Each day, Zentangle put out a video featuring one pattern, and the design was meant to be drawn in a short amount of time, so you could just take a little time for yourself and kind of get yourself centered. I encourage you to go visit their YouTube channel. I'll have the link down in the comments, and you could see how they did their designs. This series is meant to walk you through how to draw each design, and then also to give you some alternative ideas for embellishments and ways to kind of zhuzh up that pattern. This video covers one of my favorite patterns, Nipa. For all cards in this series, I used the same tools, so you will see in every single video in this series a blue Micron 05 pen, a General's Indigo blue chalk pastel pencil, an 8B graphite pencil, two Tortillons, so one for blue, one for black, and white tiles. And of course, that's my trusty little pencil sharpener there as well. If you followed along with the Zentangle series, you will notice that they also include a white pencil and a Tortillon for that. I chose to not use those for my series because I'm using a white tile, and I find that the white chalk pastel pencil really doesn't add very much to the design. Take a moment to gather your tools, get yourself centered. Make sure you're sitting comfortably in your chair. When you're ready, let's begin. We begin by drawing a seed-shaped string. We're skipping the border. So I'm going and doing one arc from one corner to the next, and then going back and doing the other. So I end up with a nice fat seed shape. After that, I put my pencil down and I grab my pen. And the first thing I'm going to do is put a whole bunch of orbs in this space, but I'm leaving space between them because there's going to be things that happen in between. Some of my orbs are going to be really big and some are going to be small. If I'm up against the pencil line, I'm just going to imagine what the whole thing would look like, but the only part we're going to see is the part that's on the inside of the seed shape. I'm going to get a nice smattering of orbs throughout my space, and then I'll be ready for the next step. I'm going to now turn my card to make the seed be on its side. This just gives you more options. You could do this from top to bottom if you wanted to. And I'm going to draw a wavy line. I start at one string line and go down to the next. And when I run into an orb, I draw behind the orb. So I pick up my pen and kind of imagine where that line is going to go and then have it come out the other side. You'll see me tracing in the air how I think that line might go. Then I draw an aura of that line. In other words, I'm drawing a parallel line. It doesn't have to be perfectly parallel, but close. And I'm going to follow the same path that that first line went, just a little ways over. And as I run into those orbs, I'm still just picking up my pen and drawing in the air and imagining what that line would look like. As you're drawing, if you find that a line is looking a little too straight or whatever, you can reshape the line, kind of taking advantage of the fact that the line is disappearing, as it were, behind those orbs. I'm going to work from the middle to one tip of my seed, and then I'm going to flip my card over and go the other direction. And the only reason why I'm flipping my card over is so I can continue to pull that line towards my body, which will give me a little more control over it, and also so I can see what I'm doing. One embellishment I like to do is to weight about half of the circle line or the orb line. I pick a side, in this case it's the right-ish side of the orb, and I draw a curve inside the orb that goes from the top to the bottom, and then I fill in the space that results between the line that I just drew and the original edge of the orb. I keep this on the skinny side. What we're going to do is when we add the shading in with our pencils, this will deepen that shadow and it'll make these orbs look very three-dimensional and like they're popping up off the lines. This is purely optional. Nipa looks pretty cool even if you don't do this. I just enjoy making the orbs look very three-dimensional, like little bubbles on some water. And now you can put your pen down and either grab your chalk pastel pencil or graphite pencil. Either will work here. I'm going to use my blue chalk pastel pencil first to create a three-dimensional orb. Using circular motions, I'm coloring along the same edge that I did the weighted line on. I'm doing a thicker line, and if the bubble or the orb is really big, I'll pull that along the sides, just a little tiny bit of blue, just so I have something to work with when I blend it out. I'm not coloring the entire orb blue. I'm thinking about where I want the darker side of the orb to be, and since I've just spent time weighting the right side of the orb, that's how I make my decision here. If you have not done the weighted line, you can decide how you want to create your highlights and your lowlights. Once I grab my Tortillon, I'm blending that blue out. I'm being careful to not pull the blue through the entire orb, so I go around in the circle and I really go over the darker side, so I'll deepen the shade or the blue that's there. But I'm being careful to leave the middle part of the orb white. And you can see that I'm actually offsetting that just a little bit. So since the low light is on the right side of the orb, my little highlight spot will be towards the left, but not all the way out to the edge. And as I pull the blue around the outside edge of the orb, I'm creating a bit of a gradient, so that left side's going to be lighter blue than the right side. The final step I'm going to do, and if you've already used graphite, you're probably not going to want to do this, is I'm picking up my graphite pencil and I'm putting a tiny little bit of graphite either right next door to the weighted line or a little opposite of the line. It's a very small amount and it's just rounding out that orb a little bit more. I'm going to do a very gentle blend on that. I'm going to keep the line close to the pen line. I'm not going to really pull that very much towards the highlight at all. And all this is doing is just rounding out the bubble a little bit. Next, I'm going to grab my chalk pastel again. Again, you can use graphite for this, and I'm going to focus on the lines. As I look at my lines, I'm looking at the peaks and the valleys relative to where I'm sitting. And I'm thinking about how those valleys would get a little more shade than the peak would. And I'm picking a side of the valley and adding some color to it. And I'm just working my way through my pattern here. Yours is going to be different than mine. It's all very dependent on how you did your wavy lines. But wherever I see a valley relative to me, I'm putting some shade right along one side. And in this case, I'm picking the left side of the valley. After I put my graphite or my chalk pastel down, I'm going to pick up my Tortillon and I'm blending out the color to get rid of any streaks, and then I'm pulling it along the little channels that are created in between those pen lines. I don't worry so much about making a gradient. It will happen naturally on its own. And if it's a very deep valley like the one that I'm working on right here, I actually take the graphite or the chalk pastel and pull it up the other side of the valley. So one side's very dark and the other side has a little bit of blue to it. I'm being careful not to color in everything. I want to have a very distinct highlight and low light here. It adds to the three-dimensionality of the design. Next, I grab my graphite pencil, and I do this whether I started with color or graphite. And I add a little bit of graphite right at the base of the valley. I don't use very much, just a little bit to deepen the depth of that valley. And then I blend it out. I keep the line as I'm blending it close to the middle. I only bring it up the sides a small amount, if at all. And now we return to the orbs. I'm going to grab my graphite and put a little bit of graphite on the outside edge of the orb where I weighted the lines. What I'm doing now is deepening the shadow that we created by doing that weighted line. And this creates basically a gradient from the pen to the pencil. And then as I blend it out, I'm keeping the graphite very, very close to the orb. I'm not pulling it too far away, just enough so we can see it, but not enough for it to really blend into all the other work that I've done. Take a moment and appreciate the work that you put into this design. And when you're ready, grab your pen and add your chalk. And there you have it, Nipa.